In linguistics, a word is the smallest element that may be uttered in isolation with semantic or pragmatic content. This contrasts deeply with a morpheme, which is the smallest unit of meaning but will not necessarily stand on its own. A word may consist of a single morpheme, or several, whereas a morpheme may not be able to stand on its own as a word. A complex word will typically include a root and one or more affixes, or more than one root in a compound. Words can be put together to build larger elements of language, such as phrases, clauses, and sentences. The term word may refer to a spoken word or to a written word, or sometimes to the abstract concept behind either. Spoken words are made up of units of sound called phonemes, and written words of symbols called graphemes, such as the letters of the English alphabet. Definitions. Summary. The ease or difficulty of deciphering a word depends on the language. Dictionaries categorize a language's lexicon into lemmas. These can be taken as an indication of what constitutes a word, in the opinion of the writers of that language. The most appropriate means of measuring the length of a word is by counting its syllables or morphemes. Semantic definition. Leonard Bloomfield introduced the concept of minimal free forms in 1926. Words are thought of as the smallest meaningful unit of speech that can stand by themselves. This correlates phonemes to lexemes. However, some written words are not minimal free forms as they make no sense by themselves. Some semanticists have put forward a theory of so-called semantic primitives or semantic primes, indefinable words representing fundamental concepts that are intuitively meaningful. According to this theory, semantic primes serve as the basis for describing the meaning, without circularity, of other words and their associated conceptual denotations. Features. In the minimalist school of theoretical syntax, words are construed as bundles of linguistic features that are united into a structure with form and meaning. For example, the word koalas has semantic features, category features, number features, phonological features, etc. Word boundaries. The task of defining what constitutes a word involves determining where one word ends and another word begins. In other words, identifying word boundaries. There are several ways to determine where the word boundaries of spoken language should be placed. Potential pause. A speaker is told to repeat a given sentence slowly, allowing for pauses. The speaker will tend to insert pauses at the word boundaries. However, this method is not foolproof. The speaker could easily break up polysyllabic words, or fail to separate two or more closely linked words. Indivisibility. A speaker is told to say a sentence out loud, and then is told to say the sentence again with extra words added to it. Thus, I have lived in this village for 10 years might become my family, and I have lived in this little village for about 10 years. These extra words will tend to be added in the word boundaries of the original sentence. However, some languages have affixes, which are put inside a word. Similarly, some have separable affixes. In the German sentence, Ich komme gerade zu Haus an, the verb ankommen is separated. Phonetic boundaries. Some languages have particular rules of pronunciation that make it easy to spot where a word boundary should be. For example, in a language that regularly stresses the last syllable of a word boundary is likely to fall after each stressed syllable. Another example can be seen in a language that has vowel harmony. The vowels within a given word share the same quality, so a word boundary is likely to occur whenever the vowel quality changes. Nevertheless, not all languages have such convenient phonetic rules, and even those that do present the occasional exceptions. Orthographic boundaries. See below. Orthography. In languages with a literary tradition, there is interrelation between orthography and the question of what is considered a single word. Word separators are common in modern orthography of languages using alphabetic scripts, but these are a relatively modern development. In English orthography, compound expressions may contain spaces. For example, ice cream, air raid, shelter, and get up each are generally considered to consist of more than one word. Not all languages delimit words expressly. Mandarin Chinese is a very analytic language, making it unnecessary to delimit words orthographically. However, there are a great number of multiple morpheme compounds in Mandarin, as well as a variety of bound morphemes that make it difficult to clearly determine what constitutes a word. Sometimes, languages which are extremely close grammatically will consider the same order of words in different ways. For example, reflexive verbs in the French infinitive are separate from the respective particle, e.g., che lava, whereas in Portuguese they are hyphenated, e.g., lavache, and in Spanish they are joined, e.g., lavacha. Japanese uses orthographic cues to delimit words such as switching between kanji and the two kana syllabaries. This is a fairly soft rule, because content words can also be written in hiragana for effect. Vietnamese orthography, although using the Latin alphabet, delimits monosyllabic morphemes rather than words. In character encoding, word segmentation depends on which characters are defined as word dividers. Morphology. In synthetic languages, a single word stem may have a number of different forms. However, for some purposes these are not usually considered to be different words, but rather different forms of the same word. In these languages, words may be considered to be constructed from a number of morphemes. In Indo-European languages in particular, the morphemes distinguished at the root. Optional suffixes, a desinence or inflectional suffix, dot. Thus, the Proto-Indo-European *wrdhom would be analyzed as consisting of *wr, the zero grade of the root *wer, a root extension *dh, resulting in a complex root *wrdh. The thematic suffix *o, the neuter gender nominative or accusative singular desinence *m. Philosophy. Philosophers have found words objects of fascination since at least the 5th century BC, with the foundation of the philosophy of language. Plato analyzed words in terms of their origins and the sounds making them up, concluding that there was some connection between sound and meaning, though words change a great deal over time. John Locke read that the use of words is to be sensible marks of ideas, though they are chosen not by any natural connection that there is between particular articulate sounds and certain ideas, for then there would be but one language amongst all men, but by voluntary imposition, whereby such a word is made arbitrarily the mark of such an idea. Wittgenstein's thought transitioned from a word as representation of meaning to the meaning of a word as its use in the language. Archaeology shows that even for centuries prior to this fascination by philosophers in the 5th century BC, many languages had various ways of expressing this verbal unit, which in turn diversified and evolved into a range of expressions with wide philosophical significance. Ancient manuscripts of the Gospel of John reveal in its 5th chapter the Rabboni wise who were chastising the Pharisees, expecting to find life in writings, instead of himself. This perhaps could have led to John's introduction in chapter of a description in the Greek translation as the Logos. A famous early scientist, scholar and priest, Thomas Aquinas, influenced Cartesian philosophy and mathematics by interpreting such passages consistently with his philosophy of logic. Classes. Grammar classifies a language's lexicon into several groups of words. The basic bipartite division possible for virtually every natural language is that of nouns versus verbs. The classification into such classes is in the tradition of Dionysius Thrax, who distinguished 8 categories: noun, verb, adjective, pronoun, preposition, adverb, conjunction and interjection. In Indian grammatical tradition, Panini introduced a similar fundamental classification into a nominal and a verbal class, based on the set of desinences taken by the word.